The emergency lights were flashing red when Yuna opened her eyes. Her head hurt badly, and her body felt like someone had thrown her against the wall many times. She tried to move, but her arms were heavy, and her legs did not want to listen to her brain. The smell of smoke and burned metal filled her nose. Slowly, piece by piece, her memory came back to her. She remembered the alarm screaming through the ship. She remembered running down the corridor while the floor shook under her feet. She remembered the captain shouting orders and people pushing past each other to reach the escape pods. She remembered climbing into a pod and pressing the launch button. Just as the ship broke apart behind her, the transport ship Horizon's Edge was gone. All those people, all her friends, gone in a flash of fire and light. Yuna forced herself to sit up. Pain shot through her ribs, and she groaned loudly. The escape pod had crashed hard. The front window was cracked in many places, and she could see something green and silver through the broken glass. Trees. Alien trees with bark that looked like black. Stone and leaves that glowed softly in the darkness. Outside, she knew where she was. During the attack, before everything went wrong, she had seen the planet on the navigation screen. Keth Prime. The name had made her blood turn cold even then. Every pilot in the galaxy knew about Keth Prime. It was on every warning list, every danger map, every training manual. The planet was beautiful from space, with its green forests and silver oceans. But no one went there. No one landed there. No one even flew close to it if they could avoid it, because of what lived there. The Vethrak. Yuna had seen pictures of them during her training. Massive creatures that walked on two legs like humans, but were nothing like humans at all. They stood almost 3 meters tall and were covered in scales that shone like metal. Their arms ended in claws that could cut through the strongest armor. Their teeth could crush bone like it was nothing. They were hunters, pure and simple. The most dangerous predators anyone had ever discovered. The first team that landed on Keth Prime had sent one message back to their ship. Just one. It was mostly screaming. After that, the Galactic Union had put the whole system on the forbidden list. No ships allowed. No research missions. No contact of any kind. The Vethrak were not a species you could talk to or trade with or make peace with. They were a species you stayed far, far away from Dot, and now Yuna was sitting in the middle of their home. She checked her suit's small computer screen. The air outside was safe to breathe. The temperature was cool, but not too cold. Those were the only good things the computer told her. Her emergency beacon was damaged and could not send a signal. Her food and water would last maybe 5 days if she was very careful. Her weapon was a small pistol with only 12 shots. 12 shots against creatures that had killed entire teams of trained soldiers. Yuna almost laughed. And how hopeless it all seemed. Almost. But she was not the type to give up. Her mother had always said that the Park family did not know how to quit. Her grandmother had survived a war. Her mother had raised 3 children alone after their father died. Yuna had worked harder than anyone else to become a pilot, to earn her place among the stars. She was not going to die on this planet. Not without a fight. The pod's door was stuck, so she had to kick it open. The metal groaned and bent, and finally gave way. Yuna stepped out into the alien forest and immediately felt how different everything was. The air tasted strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. The ground under her boots was soft and spongy. The trees around her were massive, their black trunks rising up and up until they disappeared into the darkness above. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. On Earth, forests were full of sounds. Birds singing, insects buzzing, wind moving through the leaves. Here, there was nothing. Just silence so deep it made her ears ring. Yuna gathered everything useful from the pod. Emergency rations. A medical kit. A small tent. a toolkit that she could maybe use to fix her beacon, a knife, her pistol. It was not much, but it was all she had. She needed to find high ground. Somewhere she could see danger coming before it reached her. Somewhere she could set up her beacon and try to call for help. Somewhere safe. She almost laughed again at that word. Safe. There was no safe place on Keth Prime. But she started walking anyway. The forest seemed to go on forever. Every tree looked the same as the last one. Every shadow could hide death waiting to jump out at her. Yuna moved carefully, stopping often to listen, to watch, to make sure nothing was following her dot. After 2 hours of walking, she found what she was looking for. A rocky hill rose up from the forest floor, covered with large boulders that formed natural walls and hiding spots. If she climbed to the top, she would be able to see anything approaching from a long way away. The rocks would give her protection. It was not perfect, but it was the best option she had found. Climbing the hill with her heavy pack was hard work. Her ribs screamed at her with every step. Sweat ran down her face and into her eyes. But she kept going, one foot in front of the other, until she finally reached the top. The view took her breath away. From up here, she could see the whole forest spreading out below her like a silver and black ocean. In the distance, mountains rose against the sky. 3 moons hung low on the horizon, casting pale light over everything. It was beautiful. Terrifying and dangerous, but beautiful. Yuna set up her small camp between 2 large boulders. She put out her emergency food and started working on her beacon. The damage was bad, but not impossible. If she could find the right parts, if she could connect the right wires, she might be able to send a signal. A weak signal, but maybe enough. She worked until her fingers hurt and her eyes could barely stay open. Then she ate half a ration bar, drank a small amount of water, and crawled into her tiny tent. Sleep did not come easily. Every small sound made her reach for her pistol. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. She kept seeing those pictures from training in her head. The Vethrak with their gleaming scales and deadly claws. The reports of what they did to their prey. Finally, just as the first light of dawn began to glow through her tent, Yuna fell into an uneasy sleep. She did not know that something had followed her up the hill. Something small. Something hungry. Something that was watching her with large, golden eyes from behind a nearby rock, trying to decide if this strange creature was food or something else entirely. 3 days passed on Keth Prime. 3 days of fear and hard work and loneliness so deep it hurt. Yuna had made her small camp as strong as she could. She had piled rocks around her sleeping area to create walls. She had set up simple traps at the bottom of the hill using wire from her toolkit. Not traps to catch anything, just traps to make noise if something came close. Warning bells made of metal pieces that would ring and clang if anything touched them. Every night she slept with her pistol in her hand. Every morning she woke up surprised to still be alive. The beacon was coming along slowly. She had managed to fix some of the damaged parts using pieces from other equipment. The screen now lit up when she turned it on. That was progress. But the signal transmitter was still broken, and she did not have the right parts to repair it completely. Her best hope was the orbital alignment that would happen in 2 more days. When the moons moved into the right position, communication signals could travel much farther than normal. If she could get her beacon working by then, even a weak signal might reach a passing ship. It was a small hope. But small hopes were all she had. On the evening of the 3rd day, Yuna was checking her warning traps at the bottom of the hill. The suns had set and the 3 moons were rising, painting everything in shades of silver and blue. She moved quietly between the trees, making sure each trap was still in place. She had just finished checking the last one when she felt something touching her back. Not a big touch, not a push or a grab, just tiny points of pressure, like small needles pressing through her suit. Touching her, then letting go. then touching again. Yuna stopped breathing. Her hand moved very slowly toward the pistol at her hip. Her heart was beating so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was it. This was how she died. A Vethrak had found her and was playing with her like a cat plays with a mouse before eating it. She spun around fast, pulling her weapon up and pointing it at whatever was behind her dot, and then she stopped. Sitting on a rock about 2 meters away was the smallest Vethrak she had ever seen. It could not have been more than half a meter tall. Its scales were not shiny and bright like the adults in the pictures. They were dull and patchy, with gaps showing the gray skin underneath. One of its back legs was bent at a wrong angle, clearly broken, and never healed properly. It was just a baby. A sick, hurt, starving baby. The little creature looked at her with huge golden eyes. Eyes that held no anger or hunger for killing. Eyes that looked tired and scared and desperate. It made a sound. A small chirp, like a bird asking for food. Yuna kept her pistol pointed at it. Her training screamed at her to shoot, to kill it before it could call others, before it could grow big enough to be dangerous. It was a predator. Even babies could bite. Even babies could lead adults to her location. But those eyes, those sad, golden eyes. The creature chirped again. It tried to stand up on its broken leg and fell over. It pulled itself back up and looked at her again, making that same pitiful sound. Yuna lowered her pistol. She was probably making the biggest mistake of her life. She knew that. Every rule said to stay away from alien predators. Every survival guide said to avoid contact with dangerous species. Everything she had been taught said this was stupid and reckless and would get her killed. But Yuna was not just a pilot. She was also human. And humans could not look at something small and hurt and hungry and just walk away. Slowly, very slowly, she put her pistol back in its holder. She reached into her pack and pulled out a ration bar. The little Vethrak watched her every movement with those big eyes. "Hey there," Yuna said softly. Her voice sounded strange after 3 days of silence. "You look like you could use some help." She broke off a piece of the ration bar and held it out. The food was made for humans, but it was mostly protein and fat. Maybe the creature could eat it. Maybe not. But she had to try. The baby Vethrak looked at the food. It looked at Yuna. It looked back at the food. Then, faster than she could see, it jumped forward and snatched the piece from her hand. Its small claws scratched her glove, but did not cut through. It landed back on its rock and ate the food so fast it barely seemed to chew. When it was done, it looked at her again. Chirped again. "More?" Yuna asked. Okay, little one." She fed it 3 more pieces before putting the rest away. She could not give it too much. Her supplies were limited, and she did not know how long she would be stuck here. But she could give it something. She could help a little. The baby Vethrak seemed to understand that the food was gone for now. It settled down on its rock and watched her with an expression that almost looked grateful. "I'm going to call you Bomi," Yuna said. The name meant spring in Korean. Her grandmother had loved that name. It seemed right for this small creature that had appeared out of nowhere. When Yuna needed company, most.bom, I chirped at the sound of the name. Almost like she understood. Yuna stayed with Bomi until the moons were high in the sky. She talked softly, telling the little creature about Earth, about her family, about the ship she had lost and the friends who had died. Bomi could not understand the words, but she seemed to like the sound of Yuna's voice. Her golden eyes slowly closed, and she fell asleep right there on the rock, looking at the sleeping baby. Yuna made a decision. A stupid decision. A human decision. She was going to help this creature. She was going to fix that broken leg. She was going to feed it and protect it until help came. And if no help came, well, at least she would not die alone. She climbed back up to her camp and started planning. She had medical supplies. She had wire and tape and small pieces of metal. She could make a splint for that leg. She could hunt for small animals to feed Bomi. She could do this. The night felt less dark somehow. Less lonely. Less hopeless. Somewhere down the hill, a small creature was sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks, its belly full. Finally safe from the forest that had almost killed it. And somewhere in the universe, a human woman was falling asleep with a smile on her face, not knowing that her simple act of kindness would change everything. The morning after Yuna found Bomi, she woke up to find the little creature sitting right outside her tent. Those big golden eyes were watching the entrance like a guard watching a door. When Yuna crawled out, Bomi made a happy chirping sound and tried to stand up on her broken leg. "Stay still," Yuna said gently. "Let me look at that leg today. I think I can help you." She ate a small breakfast and drank some water. Then she gathered her medical supplies and sat down next to Bomi. The little Vethrak watched her with curiosity, but did not try to run away. "This is going to hurt," Yuna warned. "But I need to straighten your leg so it can heal properly. Can you trust me?" Bomi chirped. She could not understand the words, but something in Yuna's soft voice seemed to calm her. Yuna took a deep breath and gently touched the broken leg. Immediately, Bomi hissed and snapped her small jaws. Her tiny claws scratched at the air. The pain and fear made her predator instincts come alive. I know, Yuna said, not pulling back. "It hurts, but I have to do this. Please trust me, little one." She kept talking in that soft, steady voice. Words about nothing important. Stories about her childhood. Memories of her grandmother's house. Anything to keep the sound going, to keep Bomi focused on something other than the pain. Slowly, very slowly, Bomi stopped hissing. Her golden eyes stayed locked on Yuna's face. Her breathing slowed down. When she was finally calm, Yuna worked quickly. She straightened the leg as carefully as she could. Bomi cried out, a high painful sound that broke Yuna's heart. But she did not stop. She wrapped the leg with soft cloth from her medical kit. She placed small metal pieces on either side to keep it straight. She wrapped more cloth around everything to hold it all in place. When she was done, Bomi had a proper splint. It was not perfect, but it would keep the leg straight while the bone healed. "There," Yuna said, sitting back and wiping sweat from her face. "All done. You were very brave." Bomi looked down at her leg. She looked up at Yuna. Then she did something that surprised Yuna more than anything. She pressed her small head against Yuna's palm. It was such a simple gesture. Such a human gesture. Animals on Earth did the same thing when they wanted to show trust or affection. Yuna had not expected to see it here, from a creature whose species was known only for killing. "You're welcome," Yuna whispered, gently rubbing the ridge of scales above Bomi's eyes. From that moment on, Bomi never left Yuna's side. When Yuna worked on her beacon, Bomi sat on a nearby rock and watched. When Yuna walked around the hill to gather water from a small stream, Bomi limped along behind her. When Yuna slept at night, Bomi curled up at the entrance of her tent like a tiny guard. But Bomi was not just company. She was also useful in ways Yuna had not expected. The little Vethrak had incredible senses. Her eyes could see in total darkness. Her ears could hear sounds from very far away. Her nose could smell things that Yuna could not even imagine. Several times, Bomi would suddenly stand up and chirp loudly, her head turned toward some part of the forest. Every time, Yuna would grab her pistol and watch that direction. Every time, she would eventually see something moving in the distant trees. Some other creature hunting or traveling through the night. Bomi was her alarm system, her early warning, her eyes and ears in a world where humans were nearly blind and deaf. "Thank you," Yuna said one night after Bomi had warned her about something large moving through the forest below. You might have just saved my life." Bomi made that rumbling sound again, almost like a cat purring. She pressed closer to Yuna's leg and closed her eyes. Yuna learned more about her little friend over those days. She learned that Bomi liked to have her scales scratched in certain spots. She learned that Bomi could eat almost anything but really loved the meat from the small animals Yuna managed to catch. She learned that Bomi was very smart, quickly understanding simple words like stay and come and quiet. But Yuna also learned something sad. Bomi had been abandoned. Among the Vethrak, weakness was not allowed. Yuna had read about it in the files, but had not really understood until now. When a baby was born with problems, when a young one got hurt too badly to hunt, the adults simply left them behind. No feeding, no protection, no second chances. It was how their species had survived for millions of years. Only the strongest lived. Only the best hunters passed on their abilities to the next generation. It was efficient and cold, and it made them the deadliest predators in the known galaxy. But it also meant that little Bomi, with her broken leg and her dull scales, had been thrown away like garbage. Left to starve. Left to die. Left to be eaten by something bigger. Until a strange soft creature from another world had given her food and fixed her leg, and treated her like she mattered. "You're not garbage," Yuna told Bomi one evening as they watched the sun set together. "You're special. Different is not the same as broken. Remember that." Bomi chirped and pressed her head against Yuna's hand. 2 more days passed. The orbital alignment was getting close. Yuna had managed to fix her beacon enough that it might work. Just maybe. If she was very lucky, she allowed herself to hope. Maybe a ship would hear her signal. Maybe someone would come. Maybe she and Bomi would both survive this nightmare. But on the 5th night, everything changed. Yuna was sitting by her small fire, with Bomi curled up beside her, when the little Vethrak suddenly jumped to her feet. Her ears went flat against her head. Her scales stood up on her back. She made a sound Yuna had never heard before, a low growling hiss that was full of fear. "What is it?" Yuna whispered, grabbing her pistol, and then she heard them. Heavy footsteps. Coming up the hill. More than one. Maybe 3. Maybe more. Through the darkness, she saw lights. Not lights from machines. Light reflecting off scales. Huge scales. Adult scales. The Vethrak had found her. They had found their abandoned young, and they had come to finish what they had started. Yuna had faced danger before. She had survived storms in space that had destroyed other ships. She had flown through asteroid fields where one wrong move meant death. She had been in combat situations where missiles flew past her cockpit close enough to touch, but she had never felt fear like this. The 3 adult Vethrak stepped into the light of her small fire, and Yuna understood why every pilot in the galaxy avoided this planet. They were monsters. Living nightmares made of scale and muscle and claw. The leader was the largest, standing nearly 3 meters tall. Its scales were deep blue and shone like polished metal in the firelight. Its arms were longer than Yuna's whole body and ended in claws that curved like swords. When it opened its mouth, she could see teeth as long as her fingers, sharp enough to bite through steel. Its golden eyes found her and locked on. They were intelligent eyes, patient eyes, eyes that had watched countless creatures die and felt nothing at all. The other 2 were smaller, but still massive. They spread out to either side of the leader, blocking any path of escape. Their movements were smooth and practiced. They had done this many times before. Surrounded prey. Closed in. Killed. Yuna stood frozen, her pistol in her hand but not raised. What was the point? 12 shots against creatures that could shrug off bullets. She might as well throw rocks at them. The leader took another step forward. Its massive head lowered. A deep rumbling sound came from its chest, something between a growl and a question. It was looking at Bomi, still standing at Yuna's feet with her scales raised and her small body trembling. Yuna understood suddenly. They had not come for her. They had come for Bomi. They had smelled her or heard her or somehow known that their abandoned offspring was still alive. And in their world, that was not allowed. The weak had to die. It was their law, their way. They had come to correct their mistake. Something changed inside Yuna in that moment. The fear was still there, but now there was something else too. Something hot and fierce that pushed the fear aside. These creatures had thrown away a baby because she was not perfect. They had left her to starve alone in the forest. And now they wanted to finish killing her. Yuna raised her pistol and stepped in front of Bomi. "You want her?" she said. Her voice was shaking, but her hands were steady. "You will have to go through me first." The leader stopped. Its head tilted to one side like a dog hearing a strange sound. Behind Yuna, Bomi was making desperate noises, chirps and hisses, and something that almost sounded like crying. Then something happened that Yuna did not expect. Bomi pushed past her legs and stood in front of her. The tiny Vethrak, barely half a meter tall with a broken leg still in its splint, stood between Yuna and the three giant killers. She spread her small arms wide like she was trying to block them. She opened her mouth and screamed at them, a high angry sound that echoed off the rocks. She was protecting Yuna, this tiny creature. This abandoned baby that the world had thrown away was standing against three adults to protect the human who had shown her kindness. The leader made a strange sound. Surprise, maybe, or confusion. In their whole history, no Vethrak had ever seen anything like this. The weak did not protect others. The weak ran or hid or died. They did not stand and fight, but Bomi had learned something new. She had learned it from Yuna. She had learned that sometimes you fight not because you can win, but because some things are worth fighting for. The leader stepped forward again and raised one massive claw. It was going to strike. It was going to kill Bomi with one blow, and then turn its attention to Yuna. Yuna did not think. She just moved. She jumped in front of Bomi and fired her pistol at the ground in front of the leader. The bullet hit a rock and sparks flew everywhere. The sound was incredibly loud in the quiet night. The leader jerked back, more surprised than hurt. "I said no." Yuna screamed. "She is mine. You threw her away, but I found her. I healed her. She is mine now." She was crying. She did not know when she had started crying, but tears were running down her face. Her whole body was shaking. She had maybe 11 bullets left and 3 monsters in front of her, and no chance of survival at all. But she was not going to move. The leader stared at her. Those ancient golden eyes studied her like she was a puzzle to be solved. Yuna stared back, refusing to look away, refusing to show weakness. For a long moment, nothing moved. The only sounds were the crackling of the fire and Yuna's hard breathing and the soft whimpering of Bomi behind her. Then the leader did something strange. It made a series of clicks and rumbles. Some kind of language that Yuna did not understand. The other 2 adults responded with their own sounds. They seemed to be talking, discussing, deciding something. The leader looked at Yuna again. It looked at Bomi. It looked back at Yuna, and then it stepped back. The other 2 also stepped back. One by one, the 3 adults turned and walked away into the darkness. Their footsteps grew softer and softer until Yuna could not hear them anymore. The forest was silent again. Yuna's legs stopped working. She fell to her knees on the rocky ground, her pistol falling from her fingers. She was shaking so badly she could barely breathe. Her vision was blurry with tears. Bomi crawled into her lap. The little creature was making that purring sound again, pressing her head against Yuna's chest, wrapping her small arms around Yuna's waist. "We are okay. Yuna whispered, hugging Bomi as tight as she could. "We are okay. We are okay." She said it over and over again until she almost believed it. Above them, the three moons shone down on the rocky hill. Somewhere in the forest, three predators were walking away from prey for the first time in their long lives. They did not understand what they had seen. They did not have words for it, but they remembered it. The small, soft creature that had stood against them, that had refused to run, that had protected the weak instead of abandoning it. They would remember it for a very long time. 2 more days passed after the confrontation. Yuna barely slept during that time. Every sound made her reach for her pistol. Every shadow looked like a Vethrak waiting to attack. But the adults did not return. Whatever she had done, whatever message she had sent by standing her ground, it had worked. On the 7th day, the orbital alignment finally came. Yuna activated her beacon and prayed. The signal was weak. So weak that she was not sure it would reach anything at all. She sat by her beacon for hours, watching the small light blink on and off, hoping that somewhere out there a ship would hear her call. Bomi sat beside her the whole time. The little Vethrak seemed to understand that something important was happening. She was quiet and still, her golden eyes watching Yuna with complete trust. "If this does not work," Yuna said softly, "I want you to know something. These past few days have been the most scared I have ever been. But they have also been special. Because of you. Thank you for being my friend, Bomi." Bomi chirped and pressed her head against Yuna's hand. The rescue ship arrived the next morning. Yuna heard it before she saw it. The roar of engines cutting through the atmosphere. The rumble of a ship designed for speed and combat. She ran to the highest point on her hill and looked up at the sky. The ship was beautiful. A Union patrol vessel, sleek and silver, coming down through the clouds like an angel. Yuna waved her arms and shouted even though she knew the pilot could not hear. The ship landed in a clearing at the bottom of the hill. A door opened and soldiers came out with weapons ready. They were expecting monsters. They were expecting to find a body. Instead, they found a tired woman with tangled hair and torn clothes, climbing down the hill with a small creature riding on her shoulder. Captain Dongyun Lee was the first to reach her. He was tall and serious with kind eyes. He stopped a few meters away and stared at the thing on her shoulder. "Lieutenant Park," he said slowly. "That is a Vethrak." "Her name is Bomi," Yuna replied. Her voice was rough from days of little water. "And she is coming with me." Captain Lee looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Yuna's eyes made him stop. This woman had survived alone on one of the deadliest planets in the galaxy. She had earned the right to make some unusual requests. "Medical team first," he said finally. "Then we can talk about your friend." The trip back to Union space took 3 days. Yuna spent most of that time sleeping in the medical bay while doctors checked her injuries and gave her fluids and food. Bomi refused to leave her side. The little Vethrak hissed at anyone who tried to take her away, and eventually, the doctors just gave up and let her stay. When they finally reached the main Union station, Yuna found herself in the middle of a storm. Her story spread quickly. A human had survived on Keth Prime. A human had faced adult Vethrak and lived. A human had bonded with a juvenile predator and brought it back with her. Scientists wanted to study Bomi. Military leaders wanted to question Yuna about Vethrak behavior. Politicians wanted to use her story for their own purposes. But the person Yuna spent the most time with was Dr. Yunji Kang, the Union's top expert on alien species. The old woman was fascinated by everything Yuna told her. "You showed them something they have never seen before," Dr. Kang said during one of their many conversations. "In their whole evolutionary history, the Vethrak have never encountered compassion, care for the weak, protection of the helpless. These concepts do not exist in their world." "I did not think about it that way," Yuna admitted. I just could not walk away from her. That is exactly the point, Dr. Kang said with a smile. You acted on instinct. Human instinct. And that instinct confused creatures that have been perfect predators for millions of years. You made them stop and think. That has never happened before. Yuna looked at Bomi, who was sleeping on a cushion nearby. The little Vethrak had grown in the weeks since their rescue. Her scales were brighter now, her leg almost completely healed. She was beautiful in her own strange way. What happens now? Yuna asked. Now, Dr. Kong said, we try something that has never been tried before. We try to communicate with the Vethrak. Not as prey, not as enemies, but as equals. It took years. Long, difficult years of careful work and slow progress. Yuna became an ambassador, traveling back to Keth Prime with Bomi at her side. At first, the Vethrak avoided them. Then they watched from a distance. Then, slowly, they began to approach. They remembered Yuna. The adults who had confronted her that night had told others about the strange creature that would not run. The story had spread through their population. They called her something in their clicking language. Dr. Kang eventually figured out the translation. Mother of the broken dot. It was their way of describing what Yuna had done. She had taken something they threw away and made it valuable. She had shown them that weakness was not always a death sentence. That different did not mean worthless. 5 years after her crash landing, Yuna stood in a large hall on the Union's main station. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species filled the room. And beside her stood 3 adult Vethrak, their scales gleaming under the bright lights. It was the first official meeting between the Galactic Union and the Vethrak species. The first step toward peace between predators and prey. Bomi stood at Yuna's side. She was fully grown now, almost 2 meters tall, her scales shining with health. But she still made that purring sound when Yuna scratched her head. She still followed Yuna everywhere. She was still, after everything, Yuna's friend. None of this would have happened without you. Yuna whispered to her. Bom, I chirped softly. After all these years, Yuna understood what the sound meant. Family. The meeting began. History was made. And somewhere in the back of the room, an old woman named Dr. Kang was crying happy tears, knowing that everything had changed, because one human woman had refused to walk away from something small and hurt and hungry. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not through weapons or technology or fear. They had found it through the one thing that no other species in the galaxy truly understood. They had found it through heart.